To motivate you all with his immense knowledge and valuable insights, today we have with us a serial entrepreneur with over 18 years of experience covering the consumer internet and enterprise software space.
It is a proud privilege to welcome Mr. Rahul Chari, founder and CTO of PhonePe. He built the stack for e-cart logistics at Flipkart before he went on to build PhonePe, India's first non-banking payment platform. Today, the three-time entrepreneur has immense experience in storage visualization, content management, and supply chain technology.
He has a strong background in building world class tech platforms. He is continuously scaling the systems to deal with hypergrowth and evolving the processes and practices to meet the demands of a fast growing organization. Sir, thank you so much for sparing your time to be here with us today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Sorry. Can you hear me okay? Garima, Keshav?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for having me over. It's a privilege to come and present and be the keynote speaker for the IEEE Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. A very big congratulations to all the organizers for this amazing event. I can't stress how important it is. I wish I had more of these when I was actually graduating out of engineering college. I am a product of Professor Talele and SPIT. Back then it was still SPCE. Professor Talele was one of the best teachers that I had, and I think I owe a lot to the guidance that I received early on. But programs like these, I think, give a significantly more structured benefit to youngsters who are trying to take that leap into entrepreneurship. So once again, congratulations to everybody. I think it's a very, very important attempt to actually bootstrap entrepreneurship at the student body level. I also think that the opening remarks by Dr. Satyanarayan were perfect. I can't stress 3 points that he made strike a very strong chord. One is many times entrepreneurship is seen as a way for creating wealth for yourself as well as a lot of others, which is not wrong at all. But I think the kind of social impact as well as population level benefit that it can create, especially for a country like ours, is immense. And I think it has to be looked at from that perspective. The second one is about the importance of looking at entrepreneurship as a significantly more holistic challenge, right? We all emphasize a lot on technology and the importance of technology in a lot of the startups that we build. But like Dr. Satyanarayan was saying, finding product market fit, building great operations, building a marketing engine, and finally the finesse a product is needed to get it into the hands of everybody. The farmer that may be in what we call as a tier 2, tier 3 town or village, as well as the youngsters in colleges in Mumbai, Bangalore, etc., is a very, very difficult challenge. And to look at it holistically is extremely important. And I think finally, one of the points that is very important to me, which I'll try to also cover through the presentation that I have, is about the fact that technology is a double-edged sword, right? It creates significant amount of impact at scale, but it also reduces jobs significantly. So I think one of the ways to look at entrepreneurship is more of a necessity rather than a luxury. I think going forward, the job creation engine is going to be through entrepreneurs and youngsters creating companies which are creating more jobs, and not really about people getting into the formalized job segment. So I think entrepreneurship plays a much larger role in terms of trying to create more employment in the country, and we need more people getting into that. I mean, we have been a country, by the way, of entrepreneurs. The tea shop around the corner, the restaurants, they're all entrepreneurs, right? The next is the technology revolution, where entrepreneurship is more about technology startups, and technology startups can also create jobs at scale. And that's one other lens I think all of you all should take. So I think very pertinent points that were made by Doctor. So I'll get on with my presentation. I spoke to Professor Talele and he said that it would be great for me to take all of you all through my journey over the last couple of decades and shed some light on some of my learnings and maybe a little on where I've got to with PhonePe and what are the plans ahead to kind of keep this going. So that's the flow of the conversation. I'll share a couple of slides more as talking points. Garima, Keshav, can I take over and share screen?
Sure, sir.
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
sir.
Yeah.
Shreyas,
And
would you
feel
please mind
Stopping the presentation.
Yeah.
is the screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, great. So so the flow of the conversation really is going to be about my journey up until PhonePe, where I'm at right now. Some of my learnings from the Flipkart journey, which has been what I call as a university for the country when it comes to building consumer internet startups in India, for India. Uh, PhonePe as an outcome of some of those learnings, as well as a final point, which is something I always like to share, especially with students, is incremental innovation or what we call as business as usual versus the new shiny object, whether it is deep learning or AI. I think both play a very important role. The tendency is to gravitate towards the extremely cutting edge, but sometimes incremental innovations basically take solutions that are not at scale in a country like ours and have huge social impact. So I think a little about how to actually balance incremental innovation with cutting edge new products, right? So that's kind of the flow of the conversation. I'm not sure whether there's a model to entertain questions, but I'm happy to take questions at the end of it. It's not too many slides. So my journey so far, I graduated from SPC in 99, went off to do my master's in the US, and spent the first kind of 10 years of my career in the enterprise software space at Sun Microsystems, Andiamo Systems, and Cisco Systems. That was all in storage networking. 2009 is when I actually jumped into the entrepreneurial side. I am actually a reluctant entrepreneur. After spending 10 years in the embedded software space, I actually wanted to break into the consumer internet side for a very simple reason. I think in the enterprise side, the gratification cycle, as we call it, where you actually build products, put them out there, get the feedback to be able to improve it, is fairly long. And I'd spent 10 years wherein something that you build takes at least about 2 years before you're able to actually see the impact of it or actually get feedback on whether it's working or not. And obviously, the consumer internet was booming and the feedback loop was instantaneous. What you'd build, you'd come to know whether it's working or not almost instantaneously, right? And I wanted to experience that. And I couldn't break into, after 10 years in the enterprise side, I couldn't break into the Googles or the Yahoos at that point. So the only thing I could do was start up on my own. That's what led to Manoramic.com and Mime360 in 2009 and 2011. We were building basically a digital content marketplace where we had digitized every Indian music track that was available in every language, right? Whether it was the Carnatic music or your latest Bollywood track or your Tamil tracks, it didn't matter. In fact, we were actually powering all legal streaming sites. Ghana.com, which I'm sure a lot of you all know today, launched with 100% of all their content powered by us. And that means not just the streaming music, but the album art, the search behind it, the metadata, all powered by APIs that we had built. And we got acquired by Flipkart in 2011 to build out Flight MP3, which was a music platform, and Flight eBooks, which was an ebooks platform like Kindle. Interesting fact, I am not just a student of SPC, but I'm also probably the first startup that graduated out of the what is now the SPTBI, the incubator that we have at Sardar Patel. So we were the first startup before it was formalized as an incubator and before the ESL grant came in. So very, very proud that we were that startup that started off in SPC in an environment of all students. All my first hires were students from SPC, and we built out that company that got acquired by Flipkart in 2011. Flipkart was an amazing journey. When I joined, we used to do around 20,000 orders a day. When I left Flipkart in 2015, we were doing 3 lakh deliveries a day, and they do, I'm sure, a couple of millions on a daily basis today. Some of the things that I'm extremely proud of there were we actually automated the entire warehouse, which basically meant that you're able to move from having a 4, 5 day, 6 day promise for delivery to actually making things like next day delivery, same day delivery happen. Also built out some of the largest automated e-commerce warehouses in the country. This was back in 2012, 2013 with 2 lakh square feet, which is small right now. Right now it goes into more than 1 million square feet as warehouses in a lot of places that both Amazon and Flipkart run in India. So it looks like a great run from 2000 to 2015, and obviously post 15 is where we started PhonePe, and I'll come to PhonePe a little later. But what I always like to do is take a look back and kind of build a report card for my own understanding. And if I take a view of my journey from a report card perspective, I think my first 10 years in the enterprise space was purely about learning. I think it was more about strong work ethics, working at the bits and bytes layer, spending a lot of long hours. We were lab rats, as we call it. And I think it gave great grounding for me to actually have the confidence to get into entrepreneurship. Our first venture, which was Manoramic.com, where we were actually selling music online, where people could pay for downloads, I would rate myself as naive or a D- or an epic fail. Primary thing was, I think we were excited significantly by the product that we were building. We were building, iTunes had launched that time a couple of years back, and we said, you know what, we'll build the next iTunes for India. I think the biggest obvious learning right now is that I don't think India needed an iTunes at that point, frankly, right? And this is a common mistake that most entrepreneurs do. We get excited by the idea, right? Ideas are really, learnings that I've had, ideas are dime a dozen. I mean, frankly, any fertile mind from morning to evening probably gets 10 or a dozen ideas on a daily basis. Most of them actually don't merit getting built into a product. It's great to tinker with. What you need to understand is whether you're really solving any problem, right? And whether you're really solving any problem at a certain level of scale where it deserves to get solved. Many times you're actually chasing an idea because you're married to the idea versus really solving a problem. And that was the primary failure of Manoramic.com. Now, Mime 360 was a pivot from Manoramic.com. So Manoramic.com was a website that allowed you to download music. Mime 360, we became from a B2C to a B2B. What we started really doing with Mime 360 was powering other websites using our technology platform, where we had digitized the content, we had aggregated the content, we had built API layers for search on top of the content, which is not easy given it's a very large catalog with multi-dimensional search. And we had built encryption technology to be able to actually stream the content in such a way that even if it's downloaded or ripped, you're not able to be played. So it's a DRM technology at that point, but it was a streaming DRM technology for which we had filed for an IP also. So at that point, what we realized is that the problem a lot of the legal publishers, I mean, this is the time when Sony in India was not sure how large a digital market was and did not try to actually get into it because they didn't know how to actually power content digitally. So this is Sony, right? Obviously, I remember meeting with T-Series, the head of T-Series, and the only channel they had was YouTube. And they were thinking at that point that probably their songs play 1,000 to 2,000 times a day on YouTube. They were that ignorant about the fact that how much is the scale that digital can reach when it was already millions at that point, right? So we realized that there is a market that is not being served, and content can be taken in a manner where you are able to actually protect it, you're able to measure it, and you're able to bill for it from all the legal sites that are streaming it. And that's when we built the platform MIME 360. So I call it lucky because this was a pivot, and this is extremely important. In every entrepreneur's life, you will find multiple pivots. It's very, very important to identify a pivot, and I'll explain what our pivot was. Weigh the cost benefit analysis of continuing down the path that you're already in or taking a pivot, and then making sure that you do what we call as a fast fail on your current approach and take the new approach if your cost benefit analysis suggests that you should do that. So we were running this music download site. We had licensed all this content, spent a lot of money, and it was going nowhere. So Google at that point was launching what was called Google Music India, right? It was actually a site that allowed you to stream music. And they went to Saregama and Sony and said, can we license your content? They said, you can license it, but we don't have the digital content. There is a small company called Manoramic.com that has digitized all the content. Why don't you go take it from them? So Google came to us and asked that whether they could purchase the content. So we told Google that that's our IP. It's taken a lot of time and effort to digitize all this content, build a catalog, and build this platform. What we'll do is we'll power the content for you. We will not sell the content, and we'll charge you per API, which is what is today called as a software as a service business, SaaS business, right? And again, these terms were not there, by the way, 10 years back. It might seem funny to you guys. Google laughed us out of the building, said that, sorry, you can't power us. And they said that, you know what, we'll try to digitize it. What they realized is that the time to market, we had spent a year digitizing this, and they had the opportunity to go live overnight with us. So they said, you know what, they came back, they said, we'll do a scale test on you. If you stand up to the scale test, we will then actually allow you to power the content. So they did a scale test from IPs across the world. We stood up to around 200 GB per minute of stream content at that point. That was good enough for them. They actually appreciated it. In fact, gave us a certificate of Google certified as scale. And we started powering Google Music India, which was the pivot. So we shut down Manoramic.com, and the exact same platform, we started powering Google Music. That led us to power Savan, Dingana, T-Series. There was a conversation with Spotify. They were planning to enter India, and they didn't enter. They entered much later, which is more recently. So we realized that at this point, we had actually solved a problem, which was information asymmetry. The labels like Sony, Saregama were not ready to give content to these people because they never really knew how much a content was worth. By having us as the middleware that was powering this content, they had real-time information about where a content was playing and how many times it was being played, and therefore they could attach a different value to every content, right? It was price arbitration based on content. And you must understand, for these labels, their only IP is the content. It is the copyright that they have on this content. The biggest thing was when Saregama said that, thanks to you guys, we have priced Chura Liya Hai Tumke, that track, very famous track, Chura Liya Hai Tumko, 10 times more than any other content because it's played 100 times more than any other song in India digitally, right? So that's the kind of information asymmetry that we solved. And it was basically bringing technology to an underserved market, but we were really lucky. So that's a pivot, right? So I think every entrepreneur needs to look out for these pivots because they're like the opportunities that come knocking on your door, and it goes away also very fast. After that, it was Flipkart and supply chain. So what is called eCart today. I started building out the entire technology platform for eCart. Everything from warehouse management, the transport systems, the last mile logistics, and ultimately the promise that you get. So if it's told that your product will be delivered by this date or on this date, or there's a faster option, that's a fairly complicated system. It's what we call as a operational research problem when you're in college. It's basically or a theory of constraints where you have products available in different warehouses. You have a manpower that is varied across these places to be able to pack and ship. you have transport lines that have different capacity, and finally you have last mile logistics in the city, which has its own schedule of delivery. So what is the most optimal location from which an order needs to be shipped, and in how much time it can be delivered? So it's an operational research problem. To actually build that out at scale was the primary accomplishment I had at eCart. And I think I call that as studied, mainly because it was the first time I was able to actually realize that data is the only way that you can actually start differentiating, because technology is commoditized, right? In today's world, technology per se is commoditized. There is anything that used to take a year to build can be built in a week by a college student if they need to, because most of the technology stacks are available as open source. So technology is not going to, there are only few areas when it's very cutting edge research, wherein technology itself can play the role of a moat. But when it comes to the consumer internet, you have to assume that technology is commoditized. What sets you apart is data and the utilization of the data in an intelligent manner. So I think eCart for me was that learning. And from then on, it's been, data has been the North Star for me in terms of how we actually build technology platforms, how we scale it, how we optimize it for costs. One of the other things that Dr. Satyanarayan said, which is about cost optimization, extremely important to make a business viable, again, comes only through data. So the eCart stint for me was, I would say I passed, mainly because of the fact that I finally found something that could uncommoditize established models and therefore scale it significantly more and make it much more viable. And finally, it's PhonePe, where I am at right now. We started in late 2015 and December 2015, really. And I think I was much more prepared. So it took those 7 odd years as an entrepreneur before I could actually say that I feel much more comfortable in my skin trying to actually build something of the magnitude that we are operating at with PhonePe. Two key things. One is obviously starting to use data for efficiency and for innovation. So at eCart, we used it for efficiency, which is about cost optimizations and viability. Now we started using data for significant innovation. I'll give some examples. And we started also getting significantly more input driven and output driven, and I'll explain that more. Input driven is about trying to create more structured goodness in the business and the technology. Output driven is where you're just chasing very large scale metrics. And we realize that it's much more important to be input driven as an entrepreneur, because that's what builds what I would say a company that is built to last versus a company that can be disintermediated by a competition that has more capital. So if I'll specifically focus on a few points from the Flipkart journey, and the reason I put this in, I think some of these will strike a chord with a lot of the audience, and I'll tell you how these learnings are passed on to PhonePe and where we are at with PhonePe. So at Flipkart, we had started this very famous construct called flash sale for phones. Pretty sure a lot of you all might have actually bought your Redmi, your Xiaomi's, and your Samsungs on these flash sales. The flash sales are extremely difficult, by the way. So it seems easy. You have 50,000 units and you say that it's going to be available at noon and it sells off 30 seconds or 20 seconds past noon, right? So you have what is called in technology as the herd problem, wherein you're the stampede, where everybody starts to come in at the same time and your systems will crash because you're not built for that level of concurrency. And we learned that the hard way. And we realized that at that point, the choice of the technology stack can make all the difference. It's very, very easy as an entrepreneur to put together a technology stack that is functionally working, right? Today, you need nothing. In fact, I tell software engineers that you guys are a breed of cut-paste engineers. We are a breed of bits and byte engineers. You guys have all the libraries available and you can put together, you have a framework, you'll have a microservice come up, you'll host it on AWS and you're good to go. But the choice of the stack and the design matters a lot, because functionally everything will work, but at scale, everything breaks down so rapidly and you wouldn't know what to do. So I think here, a very simple thing, right? We learned that ultimately your database needs to actually operate out of the fastest possible memory, because otherwise the IOPS, the read-write rate at which you're able to do for very high concurrent traffic, your database will crash and then it's very difficult to recover, right? So starting right from there, and then to have layers and layers of atomic caching on top of it so that you're able to manage the kind of scale. So we created this construct of, or what you'd call as artificial demand, where it feels exclusive. 20,000 units available for the first 20,000 people who come in for a population of 1 billion. Just think about that problem, right? So at the extreme, it's like 1 billion people chasing 20,000 chairs, musical chairs, and you have to build systems for that. So choosing your technology stack for the problem that you're solving, extremely important. Hustle to get the stack up just because it's functionally working is not important, right? Building it so that it is able to sustain the problem at the scale that you're operating at, extremely important. I think that's the very, very big learning. Second was the famous Big Billion Day, the first Big Billion Day. And we started at 8 a.m. and we crashed the payment gateways of Axis, SBI, and I think Standard Chartered at that point in the first 5 minutes of the sale, right? That was the kind of craziness that we saw when the first Big Billion Day launched. And there the learning was much more than just the technology stack. It was about saying that ultimately when you're chasing these, what we call as BHAG problems, big, hairy, audacious goals that all entrepreneurs chase. You are an entrepreneur. You believe that you can actually hit this out of the ballpark. That this is going to be really, really huge. But when we start a company or start a product, we become extremely jugadu. We actually say that let's build something in the fastest possible manner because we want to show results. They actually don't go together. You can't be thinking that you're going to solve for world peace and be able to do it in 1 hour, right? So there has to be some balance about how do you future provision yourself for the scale of the problem that you're solving for. So I think staying ahead of tech debt was a huge learning. Growth over revenue and cost, tough learning. So for the longest time at Flipkart, we chased numbers of growth without giving enough importance to our revenue and our cost structure, right? And then what happens is you're left, like a lot of the startups, not just Flipkart, with a very, very large burn because you've not thought early enough about your revenue model and your cost structures. And lastly, I think mirroring Valley technology culture. Building, so I think the Googles, the Facebooks of the world have kind of spoiled culture to some extent because they've made being an engineer a privilege and a right, and it becomes very as high level of entitlement versus a real joy about solving the problem that you're really in for solving. And in India, it doesn't work, right? India is a country that most businesses are based on volumes, and the value extraction is very, very limited. So businesses run on very, very thin margins, and therefore trying to actually mirror a Valley technology culture of a lot of freebies, extremely high salaries, etc., actually is counterproductive for the Indian startup ecosystem. And I'm a very strong proponent of that. I keep talking about this to a lot of startups in the Bangalore sector. I think it's important to build a more value-driven culture versus a privilege-driven culture. So these have been some of my learnings. I'll move on a little quickly so that I don't overshoot my time. So the outcome of these learnings has been PhonePe. It's been, I'm extremely proud about where we got to, and I think there's a huge further headroom for us to actually grow and create impact. But today we operate with more than 300 million users, registered users. We process more than 50 million transactions on a daily basis. That's more than 5 crore transactions on a daily basis. That translates to around, we facilitate movement of money to the tune of 10,000 crores on a daily basis. That's the kind of, on a single day through the PhonePe platform, the amount of money that gets processed is around 10,000 crores. That's the 390 billion annualized transaction volume. From a tech perspective, we have more than 100 million sessions or app opens on a single day, and more than 300,000 matches. This is now closer to 500,000 requests per second on our servers, right? So on our Nginx servers on the edge, across all the nodes, we see 500,000 or 500,000 requests per second. So I think very, very proud. We touch almost the whole of India. We are at 19,000 pin codes with 20 million merchants across the country. So I think the scale has really come about because of the learnings that we've had. And the summary of those learnings is in terms of, one, solving a problem rather than an idea. Digital transactions and the scale of digital transactions was a problem. Looking at opportunities, identifying opportunities and betting big on them. We bet very big on UPI when it was very, very nascent. Even the banks didn't believe in UPI when we started saying that we want to build on top of UPI. That's how early we started, because we identified that opportunity. And lastly, using data, and using data for both efficiency as well as innovation. I'll give a very simple example of data innovation, which has very high impact. So there is this, so PhonePe, you can do money transfers, like probably Keshav can send money to Garima. But Keshav may have two accounts of his own. He has a SBI account and an ICICI account. What we realize is that many times people are adding another account and creating what is called as an identifier to send money to their own account. They have a salary account and then they send it to another account. So we identified this through data and said that we should make a very simple pay to self option, which means that, hey, I have two accounts. Can I just transfer between them in a single click? It was nothing. It is basically a data driven innovation. It was a data insight that people were doing this jugaad of trying to add another account so that they could just transfer money between their accounts. Let's make that simpler. Just data showed that there was no technology build out needed for that. We had everything already there. We just had to actually facilitate that from the UI. We saw a 30% increase in our daily peer-to-peer transactions of those early days just by enabling that for the first week of the month. First week of the month is where people balance their accounts in the country. And every first week of the month, we continue to see a significant upside to our peer-to-peer transfers just because of the simple option of managing money yourself. And there is no technology needed to be built there, it was just a data insight. So I think using data incrementally in an innovative fashion is as important as building the next cutting edge technology platform. So I'll keep this as my last slide given the time. So some of the things that I believe are input principles that have made us fairly successful and I think are very, very important is, what is your core DNA? I think as a set of people, as founders, as entrepreneurs, you have to identify your core DNA. The core DNA could be technology, the core DNA could be operations, the core DNA could be marketing. But identifying your core DNA and significantly over indexing on that is very important, because that's your inherent skill, inherent talent. So for us, our core DNA has been technology and data, right? So technology decisioning org is what we call ourselves. And then we have a certain set of principles that we operate on. For us, building an open transaction ecosystem and an open neutral platform, extremely important. That's how we differentiated ourselves from a Paytm in our early days, saying that closed loop networks don't work. We want to be always an open loop network. Building platforms for hypergrowth, which is what I was talking about, saying that if you're in to build for India, like our vision was saying that we will allow 1 billion Indians to transact on our platform. In that case, I can't build a Jugadu transaction platform that fails as soon as 1 lakh Indians come on board. So trying to build a platform that is designed for the future scale, extremely important to us. And finally, automating everything. We believe in automating everything because it just keeps things much more consistent. So I think identifying your core DNA and having a set of principles that you operate by based on the skill set of the nuclear team that comes together is extremely important for any startup, for any entrepreneur, because you will be most comfortable in your skin if you're building a company that is foundationally based on your inherent strengths. You'll be extremely uncomfortable if you're trying, like, if you are a great marketing person, I think you have to find out how to use your marketing as your core strength and not force yourself to become a technology company. Otherwise, you'll always fail, because the next technology company whose core strength is that will come and beat you. So I think just identifying that and over-indexing on that, extremely important. That's all I really had. Thank you so much for entertaining me, and hopefully wasn't a very boring monologue.
So it was quite insightful actually. Shreyas, can you please share your slide?
Okay, so thank you so much, sir, for your insightful talk. On behalf of IEEE Bombay section and the entire organizing team, we express our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Rahul Chari for his valuable time and insightful presence during the IEEE Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.